Drew McIntyre walked into Smackdown thinking he was untouchable. He's been running his mouth for weeks, calling himself the Scottish Warrior, acting like he owns that blue brand. But nobody, and I mean nobody, told him what was coming. Nobody warned him. Nobody prepared him. And that's exactly what made Friday night so absolutely brutal to watch. Jacob Fatu didn't just attack Drew McIntyre on SmackDown. He dismantled him. He didn't just hit him, he sent a message that echoed through every single locker room in that entire building. And if you think what happened was just a random brawl, you are sleeping. You are completely and utterly sleeping. Because this was calculated. This was cold. This was Fatu operating on a different level entirely, and SmackDown will never be the same after what went down. Drop a comment right now if you think Drew McIntyre deserved everything he got. Let's get into it. Segment 1, setting the scene. Let's rewind. Let's go back to what SmackDown looked like before Jacob Fatu showed up and turned the entire show upside down. Drew McIntyre had been on a tear. He was booked strong, he was talking strong, and he was carrying himself like a man who believed zero consequences were coming his way. He had that smirk. You know the smirk. That arrogant, chest-puffed, chin-raised smirk that he wears when he thinks he's the biggest dog in the yard. And for a while, he kind of was. SmackDown had been his playground. He was cutting promos that were putting people on blast left and right. He was physically dominant in matches. He looked like a man who had zeroed in on gold and was refusing to be denied. The crowd had feelings about him, some cheering, some booing, because Drew has always had that magnetic quality where you can't quite look away from him even when he's being insufferable. But here's the thing about SmackDown right now, and this is something a lot of people are missing in the conversation. The landscape has shifted. The Bloodline's influence, the chaos theory that Solo Sikoa and his faction have been operating under, the rising dominance of Jacob Fatu as a pure physical force, all of that has been building, quietly, methodically, like a storm that you can feel in your bones before a single raindrop falls. Drew McIntyre was too busy admiring his own reflection to notice the clouds rolling in. And on Friday, the storm arrived. Segment 2, the attack breakdown. Let me walk you through exactly what happened because the details here matter. Every second of this assault tells you something about Jacob Fatu and what he represents right now in WWE. It started backstage. That's the first thing people need to understand. Fatu didn't wait for the cameras to be on him. He didn't pose for an entrance. He didn't play to the crowd. He found Drew McIntyre backstage, and he went to work. The initial ambush was savage. Fatu caught Drew completely off guard, and listen, this is Drew McIntyre we're talking about. A man who has main event WrestleMania. A man who has held the WWE Championship. A man who, on his worst day, can handle himself in about any physical confrontation you can throw at him. And Fatu made him look like he was a rookie who just signed his first developmental deal. The power Fatu displayed was inhuman. We've seen big men in WWE before. We've seen power guys. We've seen the Strowman era, we've seen Lesnar, we've seen Roman at his most dominant. But there is something about Jacob Fatu that feels raw in a way that is hard to articulate without just watching him operate. He moves with a violence that doesn't feel choreographed. It feels like genuine, barely contained chaos that he's pointed in a direction. He threw McIntyre into equipment cases. He drove him into walls. He was yelling, not performing, yelling with an intensity that made the production crew scatter. There is a legitimate menace to Jacob Fatu that the camera doesn't always do justice. And then he brought it to the ring. That's the part that crossed a line for a lot of people watching at home. Because when you take a backstage assault into a public arena, in front of thousands of fans, under those lights, that's a statement. That's Fatu saying, I don't care who's watching. I don't care what the optics are. I want everyone to see this. The Samoan spike. The running hip attack. The absolutely disgusting top rope moonsault that Fatu hits despite being the size of a small building. When that connected on McIntyre, the entire arena went silent for half a second before it erupted. Because nobody could believe a man that size was moving that fast and landing that clean. Drew was left on that mat looking like he'd been through a car accident. And the camera didn't cut away. They held on him. They let you sit with it. Because WWE knew that image was going to live rent-free in people's heads all weekend. They were right. Segment 3, why this changes everything. Now let's talk about what this actually means for SmackDown going forward. Because this isn't just a cool moment for a highlight reel. This is a tectonic shift. Jacob Fatu has been one of the most talked about performers in WWE since his main roster debut, and the conversation has always been about potential. People have been saying, watch this guy, he's special, give him time. And every time he steps up, he delivers. But Friday was different. Friday wasn't potential. Friday was arrival. When you take out someone the caliber of Drew McIntyre in that fashion, not in a match, not in a structured environment where both men are prepared, but in a sneak attack that felt personal, that felt like genuine hatred, you announce yourself as a threat. Not a prospect. Not a rising star. A legitimate, main event level threat. and Drew McIntyre is not going to let this go. That much is absolutely certain. Drew's character doesn't absorb an L like this and go home quietly. He broods. He stews. He comes back with something to prove and fire in his eyes that makes him arguably more dangerous. So the question becomes, when this escalates, and it will escalate, what does that match look like? What does that feud look like? Because think about it from a storytelling standpoint. You've got Fatu, who is aligned with the Bloodline's chaos machine, operating as this unstoppable force. And then you've got McIntyre, who has been around long enough to know that the only way you respond to this kind of attack is with something equally extreme. These two colliding in a structured match environment could be absolutely must-see television. But that's the future. Right now, in this moment, Fatu holds all the cards. He struck first. He struck hard. And he walked away looking like the most dangerous man on the entire brand. Segment for the Fatu factor. I want to spend a minute talking specifically about Jacob Fatu because I don't think he gets enough credit for how complete a performer he already is at this stage of his career. People talk about the athleticism, and rightfully so, because it is absolutely freakish. A man his size doing what he does defies logic. The moonsault alone should not be physically possible. But what I think gets undersold is his presence, his charisma, the way he makes you believe every single thing he does. There's a lineage here too that adds layers. The Fatu family name in professional wrestling carries serious weight. His father, Rikishi. His cousins, the Usos. His connection to the Anoa'i family tree. This is a bloodline, no pun intended, of performers who understand the business at a molecular level. Jacob Fatu grew up in this. He didn't just study it from the outside, he lived it. And what you're seeing right now is someone who has taken all of that inherited knowledge, combined it with his own completely unique physical gifts, and is beginning to operate at a level that only a handful of performers in the world can reach. Friday night on Smackdown was proof of that. He didn't need a long speech. He didn't need a 10-minute promo building to the attack. He just went and did it. And the impact, both literal and metaphorical, spoke louder than any microphone ever could. Segment 5: What Drew does next. Let's talk about McIntyre's response, because this is equally important. Drew is a veteran. He knows how this works. He knows that when you get embarrassed on national television the way he was embarrassed Friday night, you have two options. You can either let it define you, or you can let it fuel you. Every single thing we know about Drew McIntyre as a performer and as a character tells us he's going to choose the second option. He is going to come back with an intensity that is going to make even the people who were cheering Fatu's attack start to feel slightly nervous. Because here's the thing about Drew that sometimes gets overlooked: he is legitimately one of the best in-ring storytellers in WWE today. When he is motivated, when he has something real to chase, when he has genuine rage or pain driving him, he is exceptional. And Jacob Fatu just handed him a truckload of genuine rage. The promo that Drew cuts when he returns from this could be one of the best of his career if given the right platform and time. Because this is personal now. This isn't a title program where everything is about championship prestige. This is about a man who was made to look helpless and is coming back to even a score. That dynamic Fatu's cold, calculated brutality versus McIntyre's passionate, revenge-fueled fury is storytelling gold. And whoever is booking this feud deserves credit for letting it breathe, for letting the attack land and simmer before we rush to the next chapter. Segment 6: The bigger picture. Zoom out for a second. Look at what Smackdown is building right now. The Bloodline storyline, in its various evolutions and chapters, has been the defining narrative of WWE's modern era. The Roman Reigns chapter rewrote what a long-term storyline could look like in professional wrestling. And now, with Solo Sikoa's version of the faction and Jacob Fatu as arguably its most physically terrifying member, we are in a new chapter of that story. And SmackDown needs that energy. SmackDown needs that kind of dominant, threatening presence that makes the entire roster feel like they're operating in dangerous territory. When Fatu is out there being Fatu, everyone on that roster looks over their shoulder. Everyone is a potential target. Drew McIntyre is just the latest example. But he won't be the last. The message Friday night wasn't just for Drew. It was for everyone watching in that locker room and everyone watching at home. Jacob Fatu is operating without a ceiling right now. He is ascending. And anyone who steps into his path better be absolutely ready for the consequences. SmackDown just became a more dangerous show. And honestly, that is exactly what it needed. Outro: call to action. That is what went down Friday night on SmackDown. Jacob Fatu didn't just attack Drew McIntyre, he changed the entire conversation around that brand in one single, violent, unforgettable segment. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Do you think Drew comes back and gets his revenge, or does Fatu continue to run through him? Is this the feud that finally puts Jacob Fatu in the title picture? And who do you think is next on Fatu's hit list after McIntyre? Smash that like button if this video gave you everything you came for. Subscribe to Ring Rumble 1 if you are not already on board. We break down every major moment from WWE every single week with the energy and detail it deserves. Share this video with every wrestling fan you know, because this is a moment worth talking about. I'll see you in the next one. Stay locked in.